Welcome to CSE 2111 Midterm Review Practice. This part is about Boolean. So let's go ahead to work on this question. 4.1. Write a formula in cell D2. Here is D2. To determine true or false if the students pass the exam. The student passed the exam if he or her score is greater or equal to 85. So whenever the question asks you about the T or F, it means want you to do a Boolean. So this one, the right answer should be equal to. So whenever the score is C2 is greater or equal to 85. So here one thing is the greater or equal to you want to write separately instead of this one. Here is wrong. And another thing is, if you write down as if function as C2 larger or equal to 85 is true or false, it's okay, but you might get points off because it's already tell you to do T or F. It should be a Boolean. This one should be the correct answer, but this one it would be too complicated. So we always looking for a simpler version. And the other thing is, if you do on this if function here, you can do here as true. Just write down as TRUE instead of have a quote. If you have a quote, then it must be wrong. Like you get points off, because when we talk about the Boolean, this true, they already think the computer know what it is. If you add a quote here, it means some words. So how to figure out when you should add quote, when should not? So whenever you talk about the Boolean with the true or false, you do not want a Boolean. But if you have some other, like for example a, or a word like brick, you want a quote. So this correct answer is here, and I will provide the answer at the end of this Word document, so you can see later. Okay, let's work on the second question. Write a formula in cell E2 here to determine the next step for students. If the student passed the exam, he or she can take a break. If not, he or she needs to study. So here shows if the student passed it or not. So now you want to use a function. Okay, and so if D2 is true, here we are not going to use D2 equal to true because it's already a Boolean. So you can just say here it's already, computer already can know that you means D2 is true. If D2 is true, then you should input as brick. So if not, then study. Okay, so for example here, brick studies what computer, they do not know what that means. So you should add a quote at here to tell the computer that is something that you want to just output with the words. And but if you're doing the true, do not have any quote. Okay, and then let's work on the 4.3. Write a formula to show true or false if all students pass the exam. So if you want to know all the students pass the exam, which means all of this should be true. So here we should use the AND function, because AND function means everything inside of the AND should be true. Then the AND would be run as true. So when you do AND here, the inside should be D2 to D5. So the AND will run out as true only if D2 to D5, all of these are true, then it can be true. So this shows if all students pass the exam. Okay, then let's do second slide. So write a formula to show true or false if at least one student passed the exam. So it means if any one of them is true, then the outcome should be true. So we should use OR. What OR shows is whatever inside of the row only need one of them is true, then its outcome it would be true. Only if all of them are false, then the outcome would be false. So here should be D2 to D5. So if the OR run out as true, which means at least one of the D2 to D5 is true. So this shows at least one student passed the exam. Okay. Then let's work on 4.5. Write a formula to show T true or false if none of students pass the exam. So this one is a little bit harder one. So if none of students pass the exam, which is if there is one student pass the exam, then it will run out as wrong. So firstly we'll use OR. So OR if any students here is passed the exam, which means here would be true. If there's anyone, and then if is any students pass the exam, then because we want to know if none of students pass the exam, so our outcome should be false. So which means we can add a not in front of them. In this case, if any of students pass the exam, we will run out as false. But if here is false, which means none of students but if here is false, which means all of students are false. Here, D2 to D5, all of them are false. Then all would be run out as false. Then we not it, which is in a different way. Then this one will run out as true. Okay. So let's go for the 4.6. Write a formula to show true or false if only students in class A pass the exam. So there would be two parts. The first one is only students in class A. So class A, we have Jacob and Lynn. So is D3, D4. So D3, D4. Only student in class A passed the exam, which means either can be D3 true or D4 true, or D3 and D4 both true. So we'll use OR for this one. So any of them pass the class. So any of these two students, they are all in class A. So either any one of them pass the exam, which is what we want, which should be true. Another thing is only students, so which means students in other classes. In class B, which is Cecilia and Susan, should not pass the exam. So which means both of them should not. So that will be the same as this one. So none of the students in class B pass the exam. So we would use note any of them. So which is D2 and D4. Okay, so here should be D5. So this part means no B students passed the exam. And here means at least one in A passed the exam. And these two, you want it to be AND function. Because we want to make sure that at least one students in class A pass exam, and at the same time no any students in class B pass the exam. So that means only student in class A pass the exam. So this one should be the answer. And so here I provide the answer of all of these questions. And here there are some important things. The first is when you want to use quote, when should not. And the second thing is when should use if, when not. So like this one here, because we want to run out as the true or false, so we can just use that instead of use if. So that's for Boolean. Hope this will be helpful for you. Thank you.